Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the EURACTIV virtual conference, Georgia's road to the EU, what next? My name is Georgi Gotev. I'm EURACTIV's senior editor. It will be my privilege to be the moderator today, but on a daily basis, I report on international affairs, on issues such as Russia, the Caucasus, Georgia, of course, and it's a pleasure for me to also to visit this country that I started to learn and to enjoy. I hope that we are in a COVID exit phase and that I will be soon be able to visit Georgia again. We have today a distinguished panel sitting in Brussels and in Tbilisi. Here in Brussels, by the way, it is very cold and very dark. I hope the weather is much better in Tbilisi. But we will hear from the distinguished speaker, the First Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia. Before that, I will briefly introduce the panel. Vakhtang Makharoblishvili is the First Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia. Luc Pierre de Vigne is the Deputy Managing Editor for Russia, Eastern Partnership, Central Asia, Regional Cooperation and OSCE at the European External Action Service. Lawrence Meredith is the Director for Neighborhood East and Institution Building at DG NEAR at the European Commission. Marina Kaljurand is member of the European Parliament from Estonia, a Renew Group, SND Group, sorry. She is the chair of the delegation for relations with the South Caucasus in the European Parliament. And last but not least, Michael Emerson, Associate Senior Research Fellow at the Brussels think tank CEPS and the former EU Ambassador. So, welcome everybody. I will give the floor to Mr. Makharoblishvili, but before that I would like to congratulate you with the National Day of Georgia. That was yesterday. It was the 103 years from the first since the first democratic republic of Georgia. Congratulations. You have the floor, Mr. Makharoblishvili.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Of course, well, first I can tell you that in Tbilisi we have a very warm and nice weather, and hope that in Brussels you're going to have a nice weather as well. And of course, first and foremost, let me say that it's a great pleasure for me to be part of today's discussions about to what is next in Georgia's European way with distinguished colleagues that you have listed, as well as, of course, with distinguished audience. But before maybe saying and commenting regarding what's next in Georgia's European way, may I also say a couple of words to what you have kindly mentioned and congratulated us with the Day of Independence of Georgia, because yesterday Georgia celebrated the birthday of the first independent Georgian Republic of 1918, and to say that with that date and with the first democratic Republic of Georgia, I mean, it matters a lot to what I'm going to be commenting about later, because it matters to what Georgia is today. Because 3 years following the announcement of independence from the Russian Empire in 1918, from 1918 to 1921, Georgia was a functioning democracy with a multi-party system. And the first Georgian parliament, which was elected by both men and women, it enjoyed the presence of 5 women members, including actually ethnic minorities. the new constitution of those years abolished capital punishment and guaranteed freedom of conscience, religion, expression, assembly, and the rights of minorities. By that, basically, I would say that firmly placing my country, Georgia, within the wider European family. However, unfortunately, soon after that, Russian army, but in fact, Red Army, Soviet army, didn't lose many time and invaded Georgia into 1921, and it took Georgia another 70 years to regain its freedom and its independence and restart or resume what Georgia had started 70 years before that, building an independent state based on the principles of freedom, democracy, and equality. Today, like 100 years ago, Georgia is transforming and reforming itself, basically building a democratic country. What has been asked and requested by Georgian society, by Georgian citizens. Today's constitution very much resembles the constitution of 1921, because I mean it speaks of the same principles and same values. And the reason I wanted to really compare these two documents is because that every time Georgia would regain its independence, Georgia would strive to build a state based on the principles of democracy, human rights, rule of law, and plurality and equality. And by saying that, I wanted to really underscore that the Georgian people's choice to aspire towards Europe, towards European Union, is first and foremost a value-based choice of Georgian people, and that's why whoever there is in the government of Georgia is of course requested to follow the will of the people of Georgia. And I can, in that sense, mention that throughout the 30 years of our regaining independence, the support for EU integration has never been lower than 70%. Today, we are an associated partner with the European Union. We are implementing an association agreement, the document, which is based on the common principles, common values with the European Union, upon which EU is built and upon which Georgia has committed itself to implement and promote. We are now in the process of elaborating an association agenda with the European Union for the next 7 years. And in fact, I mean, when we talk about the next steps or future outlook, implementation of the association agreement is, of course, in the cornerstone of this process, because we strongly believe that our EU integration is, we are going to be evaluated upon the implementation of the association agreement in that sense. Of course, we are looking forward for new benchmarks, for new opportunities, and in that regard, gradual integration and full integration to the EU single market is one of those important big benchmarks which we are looking forward to. And in fact, it is also mentioned in the association agreement and in relevant EU documents. As a matter of fact, shrinking the physical distance between EU and Georgia is another important aspect which we have been working on with the EU lately, and we will be dedicating a lot of time and resources to really find the ways how we can connect better each other. I mean, on the issue of connectivity, to say it shortly, on the connectivity, be it transport, be it energy, digital, or in other ways. I mean, to say it shortly, we are going to be looking forward to open up any window, any door which we can open in order to make us more prepared for our final goal, our final aim, which is to be part of the European Union. And you might have heard that Georgian government has made a pledge to file an application for a candidacy to the European Union by 2024. Therefore, it is important that we work hard. I mean, we have done a lot. I think the reform process has been going well, including the implementation process of the association agreement. But of course, Georgia needs to continue with the same level of commitment and do even more to make sure that we are well prepared for those ambitious goals that we have pledged to ourselves. So I hope that today's discussions will give us a good ground, good new ideas, opinions in the current and future discussions to Georgia's European towards, Georgia's European future and future outlook of Georgia's EU integration process. Thank you, and of course I'll be happy to be part of today's lively discussions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makharovlishvili. I notice that you stress the high level of support for EU membership in Georgia. I must say that I'm glad that the European Union is attractive seen from the outside. We are very critical of the European Union, but each time that I travel, I really understand the position of countries like Georgia towards the European Union. I would like to tell the audience that you have the possibility to ask questions in writing by indicating your name, of course your question, and to whom do you ask the question. Please stick to the subject of the conference, which is Georgia's road to the EU, what next? We heard about the date 2024, the target when Georgia will be ready to apply for EU membership. I would start by asking, but this will be later, Mr. Makharovlishvili, what are the milestones before 2024? But before that, I will give the floor to Luc-Pierre Devigne, representing the European External Action Service. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me please congratulate Georgia on its Independence Day yesterday, and it's a pleasure to be here with Vato, with Deputy Foreign Minister Makharovlishvili, and participants. And it was good also to have a reference to the first modern establishment of the Republic of Georgia, which, even if it was short-lived, was extremely advanced in terms of freedoms for that time. Today, Georgia is a reform-oriented, key associate partner, and we remain very much committed to strengthening the political association and economic integration, which is encapsulated into our association agreement and DCFTA, a very ambitious agreement, if need be, to underline. And an ambitious agreement that has brought important benefit to Georgia. And to quote some of them, obviously the visa-free regime, but also the alignment on Georgia on EU acquis, by Georgia on EU acquis, to ensure, for instance, recently better air quality, sustainable forestry management, more transparent public procurement procedures, better labor protection, improved lives of Georgian citizens in general. Also, research and study exchanges and opportunities opening up. But we all know also that recently Georgia was a subject of, to some extent, still is a deep political crisis. There, I must say that the recent EU-mediated political agreement of 19 April offers a way forward for Georgia, but upon condition that Georgian political forces follow a way to depolarize as much as possible. Polarization is political life, but not to the point that it paralyzes institutions, and particularly important institutions such as the Parliament. There were a number of reforms which were agreed in that brokered agreement, and I would like to highlight two of them: electoral reform and a judicial reform. And a judicial reform, unfortunately, which is very, very key, still has a long way to go. And often one has understood that justice independence, which is of course an important characteristic, means unaccountable, which is not the case. An independent justice should be accountable. If they are incompetent, or even worse, corrupt judges, there must be ways to remedy that sort of situation. Unfortunately, yesterday, we saw a number of steps of appointments which were not going in this right direction. And as the former ambassador of Georgia, Natalie Sabanadze, excellent ambassador, was recently publishing the moral case for Georgia forward, it is very important also to build a case of, I would say, functioning democracy. And EU is certainly ready to take the relationship forward, but it also is important that Georgian democracy is functioning. And functioning means that, yes, there are differences, there are debates, there are oppositions, there are differences, but these should be dealt with through the institutions, not outside institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Vigna. I would propose that Mr. Makharobishvili reacts to some of the statements. Mr. De Vigna mentioned judicial reform, which still has a long way to go. Some appointments made yesterday which do not go into the right direction. So maybe Mr. Makharobishvili, you would like to react at this stage, even before the Q&A session. You have the floor, sir.
Of course, I mean, it's up to you, moderator. I mean, we can, of course, continue discussions after all the speakers will comment, but I'll be happy to comment to what Luke mentioned. I mean, I think, as I mentioned in my remarks, Georgia, throughout a number of years, has been doing a good job when it comes to the implementation of the association agreement. We have been mentioned to be a front runner in the process, and I think these are not, of course, the mere words, but these are based on those reports that are being done by the ES as well as by the European Commission. And of course, we have always underscored for ourselves that I mean, we have to keep up with the process, and even though the association agreement is a very comprehensive, very substance-driven, and very difficult document to implement, because I've been often told that once Georgia implements the association agreement, we'll be in a position to bring and integrate 70% of EU acquis, core acquis in Georgia's legislation. So this is not just an agreement of partnership, but in fact, this is an agreement of countries' integration process with the European Union. So therefore, the reforms like electoral reforms, the reforms like judicial reforms are extremely important. And I would say that Georgia has come a long way. I mean, it's not that the reform process is starting now. I mean, I would say that we have done a number of important, we have taken up a number of important steps in that directions in various international rankings. or the court applications like Strasbourg Human Rights Court applications are a good example that we are moving in the right direction. At the same time, of course, this is the sector, the field of reforms which needs a lot of time. And I mean, of course, it is important that Georgia continues to be committed in this process. And in that regard, of course, I will also recall President Michel's visit to Georgia and the agreement that has been signed during that visit. And judicial reforms, I believe, are of course part of that agreement. And I can assure dear colleagues that the Georgian side and Georgian government continues to be committed to fully implement that document, including, of course, to continue with the judicial reforms and with the consultations on that regard with our European partners. To my knowledge, I mean, what has happened today is, of course, the selection of a couple of judges, and the explanation is to that is the fact that we cannot just stop the judicial system and judicial sector, but at the same time, of course, it is important that we continue with the reforms. And I mean, the ruling party, the colleagues from the Parliament of Georgia had on numerous occasions stated that they continue to be deeply committed to the Michel agreement, including, but at the same time, of course, the association agreement, because association agreement also speaks of the judicial reforms, that I can, in fact, express our gratitude to all the support that we have received from the EU when it comes to improving our judicial system. And of course, we'll continue into this process in the same spirit.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Makharovishvili. Really, speaking about the country I know best, Bulgaria, we didn't solve the problem of the judicial reform before we joined the European Union, and the problems, unfortunately, still exist. Next on my list is Lawrence Meredith, Director of DigiNear, Neighborhood Eastern Institution Building. You have the floor, sir.
Great. Good afternoon, Georgi. Great to see you, Deputy Minister and members of the Parliament. Great pleasure to be on this distinguished panel. 30 years ago, as Georgia regained its independence, I was wandering around what was then called the former Soviet Union and discovering this new and beautiful region for myself. And I think Georgia has been on an incredible journey over those past 30 years, and I think all Georgians can be extremely proud of how far they have already got on their road towards the European Union. And I mean, there have been some challenging moments in the past months, but I'm very pleased to see that the 19th of April agreement gives a solid foundation to move further forwards with this clear reform path. It's very important that they build now on this substantial cross-party agreement on electoral reform. A major challenge on the next stages will, of course, also be justice reform, as Lucas said. But I think we should look at the achievements first. I think that the association agreement, which Georgia has signed with the European Union, is one of the most ambitious agreements there's ever been in terms of EU relations with third countries. And I think it contains absolutely huge potential. So I think, as the Deputy Minister says, there is an awful lot on the plate already between the EU and Georgia. And these are agreements that can really take over a lot of the single market legislation in areas such as sanitary and phytosanitary conditions, a lot of regulatory conversion, extremely ambitious agreements. And I would also like the whole world has been hit extremely hard by this dreadful COVID pandemic. And I think yet again, we have seen that Georgia and the European Union are stronger together. On the side of the European Union, we moved fast with unprecedented speed last spring to reprogram the European Union support to Georgia in agreement with the government. And we mobilized nearly 200 million euros to tackle immediate COVID-19 challenges. And the priority now is definitely to build back better. It's important to seize this opportunity of this, in many ways, unwanted change in our behavior. But since we are where we are, let's take advantage and try and seize the silver lining of COVID and make sure that we embrace the green transformation and the digital transition. Indeed, we wouldn't even be able to communicate on this important platform if we hadn't embraced digital much more comprehensively than was the case only 18 months ago. I think Georgia are an ambitious people. They have an ambitious vision. And I think on the side of the European Union, we want to do everything possible to support and provide cooperation on that road. I think there's some really interesting and important topics that we could discuss. In these challenging political environments, we can see all the more the importance of connectivity. And I would highlight here particularly the Black Sea. Both the physical connections can be strengthened in terms of transport through, for example, new ferry and feeder services and refurbishment of ports, but also digitally. We see now how important this can be. And that's an area that the Georgians have signaled they'd like to work very strongly on. And I expect that we will have a high-level dialogue to see how best to take this forward. And also, the economic recovery, at the heartbeat of Georgia's economy are thousands of small and medium-sized enterprises. And together with important actors such as the European Business Association, it's really embracing this potential that is already in the association agreement and strengthening Georgia's export capacity. There's already some of the irresistible honey and fruit, blueberries, kiwis reaching the European market. But those of us who know and love Georgians' exports, not just the food, know how much potential there is to grow on the export side. I'd also thirdly like to talk about digitalization. I come from a rural mountainous region, not as high in terms of the mountains as Georgia, but I know what it means to have difficult internet connections. And I think further work on developing high-speed broadband infrastructure can be especially beneficial for the many rural settlements. And we need also to help them support the development of digital skills and growth. And, this is also European Union Green Week. So I'd like to say a word on that. I think one of the challenges that citizens consistently highlight is air quality. And I think that's an area that we can work together on. This is one of the European Green Deal commitments, is moving towards zero pollution. And, we have a common vision because President von der Leyen has been very clear that Europe needs to be a climate neutral continent by 2050. And she talks of the continent. So that's not just the European Union. We can't go it alone. We need Georgia. We need cooperation. And I think it's ambitious policy goals like this that look at the broader European family that help further strengthen Georgia as proximity to the European Union. And that's something we can work on together, strengthening environmental and climate resilience for the benefit of Georgian citizens, but also ultimately of EU citizens. And let me finish on an area that's of particular importance, and that's the youth. I think that one of the greatest benefits so far achieved in EU-Georgia relations is the visa liberalization and the movement of peoples. And I think Georgia has a particularly vibrant youth, and I look forward to working together on implementation of a youth strategy in line with the association agenda, and taking forward the ambitious principles of cooperation. And certainly on the side of the European Union, we stand side by side with Georgia and its people as they move on their stated goal of moving ever closer towards the European Union. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meredith. I see that you are in tune with Mr. Makharovishvili, who spoke about reducing the physical distance, and you said the same. Speaking for myself, I don't think Georgia is very far away, because when I'm at the Bulgarian Black Sea shore, I know that on the other side is Batumi. It's not very far. But of course, we have to have better connections. Without further ado, the next speaker on my list is Marina Kaljurand, a member of the European Parliament. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you. Thank you, Georgi. And hello once again. Hello to all the panelists and those who are watching us. It's always a pleasure to be in such a nice and distinguished company. Mr. Minister Vakhtang, it's so good to see you. Congratulations on your Independence Day, and the weather in Brussels is really, really nasty. So you're in a much better position as to the weather. But coming to today's topic, I think it's very important, Vakhtang, that you reminded us all the history of Georgia, the fact that Georgia regained independence in '91. And trust me, it's very close to my heart. I come from Estonia. We were for 50 years in the same union, whether we wanted or not, and I can be very concrete here. We didn't want to be there, but we were. That was our past. And I think the pure fact that we were in the same union, we shared so much together. And I think that's why maybe my country is well positioned to be your close friend, to be your close ally, and to support you in all the ways we can on your way of democratic reforms and closer integration with Eastern Partnership and transatlantic ties. And as a former ambassador and as a former foreign minister, I would like to say that yes, Estonia is your close friend and supporter. Now coming to the European Parliament, I'm very honored and humbled and happy to be the chair of the South Caucasus. So I have to say that the task is not easy. Sometimes we are having pretty difficult, open and frank discussions with you, Vakhtang, with your colleagues, with other members of your parliament. But that is the way how cooperation works. And that is the way, I would argue, how friends and those who wish your nation good should react. Frankly, openly discussing also difficult topics and challenging topics. I think for years we were used to the fact that Georgia is the best in the class when we talk about Eastern Partnership. So I can be very open that the decision not to support constitutional reform last summer and the results of the parliamentary and the results of the crisis that followed the parliamentary elections last autumn, they were kind of a shock, also for your friends. We were used of seeing Georgia fulfilling its international commitments, doing reforms, being committed to European integration. And unfortunately, what happened after the parliamentary elections was a reality check for many, I think, in Georgia, but also for many in the EU. Because of the pandemic, European Parliament was not able to observe the elections. But we stated our position on international observation missions, in particular OSCE ODIHR. And altogether, OSCE ODIHR confirmed that the parliamentary elections were fair and democratic. Yes, there were things that needed improvement. Yes, there were some incidents of not proper carrying out of elections, but the overall assessment was positive. So that's why it was so important that Georgian Parliament would start its work as soon as possible with all political parties, with all members of Parliament who were elected to the Parliament. That's why I was urging then, and I continue doing it, urging all politicians to take up their mandate in the Georgian Parliament and to start working to the benefit of your nation, of your people, and the future of Georgia. Every parliament needs opposition. Democratic parliament needs vocal opposition. That's the way of carrying out political reforms. I'm very happy with the agreement that was reached thanks to the Charles Michel mediation initiative, and particularly EU Ambassador Karl, my very good friend. He did a tremendous job together with US ambassadors. But EU can't always solve political crises in an Eastern Partnership country. Your country, your government, your politicians, your nation has to take responsibility and act in the way that the situation will never occur. I'm happy that almost all opposition members have joined the parliament, not all, and to be honest, I do not understand those who haven't. Because sitting outside of the parliament, being not present during the discussions, they do not serve the interests of the nation. And if any members of the opposition are listening to us who have not joined the parliament yet, please do it. And you can count on us in the European Parliament to be very balanced, to be very open, and to be very frank about all the reforms that need to be done. And they are constitutional reform, judicial reform, and all the questions that come from pandemic. Because these are the questions that are on the table in your parliament at the moment, and they have to be addressed with governing parties, with opposition parties, and with civil society.
Thank you.
And to conclude, just to conclude, the agreement has to be fulfilled not only by the letter of the agreement, but also in the spirit. You are again in a pre-election period. You are preparing for local elections. It's so easy to go again into political confrontation. So it's of utmost importance to go into the elections with campaigns, but with decent campaigns, with campaigns that respect other political parties. And my very final remark, I can't say that the Eastern Partnership is of much interest in the European Parliament. Sometimes I feel real fatigue with that. People are tired of Ukraine, of Georgia, about those discussions. But I can assure you that it will be on the agenda in the European Parliament, and I can assure you that you will have the full support of the European Parliament as long as your country is on the road of the democratic reforms. Full support means also support to Georgia's territorial integrity and to Georgia's non-recognition of Georgia's occupation. And I hope that we'll be able to talk about your membership application during the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Kaljurand. As you say, discussing issues frankly and openly. This is what we do at EURACTIV Debates. Next on my list is Michael Emerson. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Georgie, for the invitation. It's an honor to be the only non-official on the panel. I will use my time to address two questions quite practically. Both are issues of credibility. One is addressed to Georgia and the second is addressed to the European Union. Now, the first point, trust and credibility of the democratic rebirth of Georgia, which we've been so glad to see emerge in the course of the last few days and weeks. There's still a but there. Do we trust the new regime? In order to establish that trust, and with a view to making more credible Georgia's 2024 plan, it would be an extremely good idea if Mr. Bidzina Ivanishvili definitively and really retired, and as a French citizen, he can choose to reside in Cannes or even Saint-Tropez if he prefers. But the problem is that the stain of state capture still hovers as a cloud over the political regime in Tbilisi. That could be immensely relieved or improved with the move that I suggest. And now he did this already earlier in the year. He announced his definitive retirement for the second time early in this year, but from the events that followed, it is fairly evident that that was not entirely the case. So this time, let's do it really. Okay, enough for that. Now on to my second point, credibility, and I pick up the first question, Georgie, on your agenda, the more for more question. Where is the beef, if any, you ask? Very good question. The principle itself is excellent and very important. The problem is its operationalization by the EU is too fuzzy. It appears as a slogan in speeches without its operationalization being credible. Now, less for less, we know what that means. And Moldova knows what it means in practice in recent years. So there we saw it in action, less for less. But more for more is just an easy, fuzzy slogan. And that is not good enough in order to be a real incentive, as the principle of more for more is intended to be, incentive for reform progress. Now, how to resolve that? We at CEPS, we've recently published something, and the link is on the chat here, with a specific proposal. The more for more business means that the conditions have to be benchmarked and they have to be specific. Our proposal or our simulation is to take all of the chapters of the AA and DCFTA and rate them according to whether the implementation is good or mediocre or poor, or better, better, to translate those qualitative expressions into numbers, 2, 3, 2, 1. Now that mere technical translation is extremely important potentially because it allows the numbers to be added up and to have averages of the total set of chapters or clusters thereof. So the idea is that the Commission, our idea is that the Commission ought in the next year to rate performance strictly, clearly, transparently, summarily, according to such a numerical scale. And that would establish the benchmark for reviewing on an annual basis whether progress is made or whether things are going backwards. And attached then to this technical system should be clear indications of what funding is to be made available depending upon whether more actually happens on the policy front or not. So that would give operationalization to the more for more principle. It needs it, it deserves it, and I would invite the European Union side to think about doing precisely this. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Emerson. Interesting ideas. Let's start with the questions from the audience, and I will give priority to questions related to the topic of our conference. Teona Lavrilashvili asked 2 questions. She didn't say who she is, but I know her. She works with KU University in Leuven. She recently submitted an op-ed about Georgia, which we were glad to publish. She has a question to Mrs. Kaljurand, and she asks how the European Parliament views Georgia's upcoming application for EU membership, obvious the one for 2024. And she asks, will the European Parliament in general and your group, the Socialists and Democrats, support this application? You have the floor, Mrs. Kaljurand.
Yes, thank you, Georgi. And please call me Marina. My family name is too complicated. J is silent, so don't even bother trying that. Please call me Marina. Well, thank you for the question. And it's a tricky question because each and every nation should have the right to decide their future. And Georgians have the right to apply to the organization that they will want to belong to. But instead of asking different opinions from different countries, different political groups, it's important to remember that it's a political question, which means unanimity support in the EU. That's the only way of enlargement. And again, I'll be very open and frank. There is no consensus on EU enlargement in the EU. That's the reality. So there is not. So that's why I will not pay so much attention to the question of membership, because, as I said, it's not going to be realistic in the near future. Instead of that, it's much more important to pay attention to closer cooperation on sectoral reforms. And here I'd like to congratulate Georgia. I think that your approach of writing your new programs and strategies and aligning them with the EU is excellent. Being it digital development, being it green development, climate changes, the alignment with EU is important and you are doing it. So I think it's important to lower Georgia's people's ambitions and understanding, because you will not get yes in 2024. And better to lower the expectations and explain the reality. And I can even say that in the EU, there are still some member states who think that the enlargement, which included 10 member states, including mine, in 2004, was a mistake. It was too much to swallow for the EU. So the reality is, to talk about membership, it's a political question, it needs consensus, it's not there yet, we have to keep working on that. I'm a very strong supporter of open door policies. I can't speak on behalf of my group yet, we haven't discussed, and I know that in my group there are different opinions. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you very much. The second question from Teona Lavrashvili is to Mr. Makharoblishvili, and it concerns the recently officialized trio, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And the idea is, to advance together toward the common goal of these three countries, which is EU membership. I understand that the general thrust of the idea, how do you intend to use this instrument, this trio?
Thank you, and thank you, Teona, for this question. I actually wanted to also maybe reflect to some of the comments that other colleagues made earlier. I don't know, would you prefer me to do it now? Or shall I just respond to Teona and maybe reflect?
You can do it now. You can do it now, yeah. Mr. Makharovici.
Thank you. Then I would reflect to some of the comments that dear friends and colleagues mentioned. I mean, first and foremost, I really want to, of course, once again, and I will not tire by expressing gratitude to the EU for the support that the EU had been rendering to Georgia during the pandemic period, and Lawrence mentioned it, and of course we appreciate that very much. And in Georgia, we always say that friendship and friends are discovered in difficult times, and I think that was another good demonstration that EU for Georgia is an important and key partner, and we hope that EU itself also renders Georgia to be an important and reliable and key partner in this part of Europe and in this region. And Luke mentioned it, and of course I appreciate these words again. Marina mentioned about the engagement of the European Union and about the recommendations, criticism coming from the EU. And I must say that we have always welcomed and appreciated the engagement of the European Union with Georgia. And I think the recommendations, the engagement, the visit of President Charles Michel was very important political message to Georgian people, that the EU cares about us, cares about Georgia, and cares about Georgia's future. So any criticism, any recommendations that come from friends, from partners, is very well received, is always taken on board, and of course, we have been committed to work together with you to continue the reform process and democratization process of Georgia. In that sense, I will also echo to what Lawrence mentioned regarding connectivity, about the potential of the Black Sea, to make sure that we make Black Sea the sea of prosperity and development, and of course the climate change and the Green Deal. And I can assure you that Georgia is very much committed to priorities that are there in Brussels and among member states. And when it comes to climate change, we have been very much committed to the Paris Agreement, and very recently, I can also mention it, in accordance with the association agreement, we have adopted very significant energy efficiency legislation, as well as new forest code, which I am convinced will do its humble share to improve air in Georgia, as well as, of course, implement relevant commitments that are there with the European Union. I would not really want to actually comment when it comes to the former chairman of the ruling party, but since there was a question raised related to that, I would make a small remark or small comment on that, because until last year, Mr. Ivanishvili was a chair of the biggest, party in terms of, the ruling party of Georgia. So obviously there was no surprise that chairman of the ruling party had been actively participating in Georgian politics. But when it comes to now, I would actually come up with the reply question, if I may, that how it is not evident that he has retired, because I have not really noticed Mr. Ivanishvili to be active or making any comments, or being engaged in any politics. So I would come back with the question of where is it evident that he is still in the politics. Now, when it comes to Teona's question, I think first and foremost, I want to say that Georgia has been always committed to the Eastern Partnership. We have demonstrated our commitment to Eastern Partnership, and it has been always important for Georgia that all 6 countries are engaged with the EU, with the organization to which we aspire to. Therefore, we have always underscored and highlighted that the differentiation principle, alongside the inclusiveness principle, had been a key to the success of Eastern Partnership rather than the obstacle to it. And when it comes to associated trio, we have been. I think this is a logical development of our cooperation, because these countries have association agreements with you. Because these association agreements, as had been mentioned by Lawrence and other colleagues as well, is very ambitious, very complex, and substance driven. Now, we have been cooperating with each other and with the European Union, how we can do more, and we can achieve more on more to more principle, and more for more basis in this trio format. And you would know and you would remember that we have been already having DCFTA ministerial meetings with the relevant EU commissioner and three trade ministers, economic ministers of Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. Therefore, this cooperation has been already there. We have been developing joint non-papers when it comes to our expectations towards EU. We have been writing joint letters to relevant commissioners, EU member states, about our priorities when it comes to European integration. Therefore, this memorandum was a logical development of the process, and I would say that there are probably two pillars, so three dimensions and three pillars of this trio formation. One is to cooperate more with each other when it comes to creating common areas with each other. The second pillar would be to cooperate together in a more enhanced way with the European Union. I mean, we have been, of course, doing that already, and we will, of course, explore new ways, new ideas, how we can do more joint efforts when it comes to three countries integration process with the European Union, because these are the three countries who aspire to join the European Union. And the third pillar would be also our joint efforts within Eastern Partnership framework. So I think and I believe that this trio would be a very effective and efficient formation to work together and basically build new opportunities in our joint aspiration towards EU membership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Makharovishvili. The next question goes to Lawrence Meredith, and the question comes from Bella Tskelishvili. She didn't say who she is, but I googled her. She works in the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, and more precisely for relations with the Eastern Partnership. So the question is to Mr. Meredith, will the upcoming post-2020 Eastern Partnership policy framework focus on decentralization and public administration reforms as well? You have the floor.
Thank you very much for this question, Bella. Very important point. I think there's full agreement both between Georgia and the European Union that what's most important is that our cooperation brings clear and tangible benefits for citizens. And in that context, it's absolutely essential that we further deepen and strengthen our work with local authorities. As you may know, the European Union, both with Georgia, but with all Eastern Partnership countries over the past, since the last summit 4 years ago, has agreed on focal regions in each country. That allows us to really target our assistance and make sure that citizens on a local level feel the benefits of European Union cooperation, whether it's on issues that we've discussed, some of the big challenges. We've talked about electoral reform, but also justice reform and public administration reform, but also the economic benefits and the benefits of this connectivity that we've just been discussing. It's absolutely essential. And I'd just like to mention briefly that we have two really powerful networks, the Covenant of Mayors, where for a number of years we've been developing, and nearly half the cities of the Eastern Partnership are now engaged in activities on energy efficiency. Indeed, that network was so successful that 5 years ago we set up another network of mayors, and again we're almost at half of the cities engaged in promoting economic development. And I think this powerful local networks, as you'll know from your own background, can be really strong in ensuring that the European Union cooperation is as close to citizens as possible. So definitely that's a priority going forwards. Thank you.
I have a question coming from Alfonso, who calls himself a EU citizen. And the question goes to Mr. Makharovishvili. And he refers to the European Parliament resolution, which called for an investigation into incidents of excessive use of force by Georgian law enforcement authorities against peaceful protesters and journalists, including during the 2019 protests. He asks what is the state of play there. You have the floor, Mr. Makharovishvili.
I have to admit, I don't recall this European Parliament resolution on this particular. I mean, I can recall a lot of EP resolutions and declarations when it comes to Georgia, including, of course, Georgia's implementation process of the association agreement, including Georgia's occupied territories and the support that has been rendered by the EP to Georgia's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and its quest and aspiration towards the European Union. There have been resolutions on that as well, but I have to admit, maybe if colleagues from Georgian Parliament or maybe Marina could recall this resolution. I have to admit I don't recall this specific resolution on the investigation of the journalists issues. I mean.
Marina, if you recall details of this resolution, and was there a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry to say, I don't remember that we had specific resolution on this specific topic. Yes, in different general resolutions, the topic has been raised of rule of law and of the procedures for inquiry and full-fledged inquiry into the excessive use of force. So in principle, I know that there have been inquiries in Georgia. I know that some people have been brought to justice because of excessive use of power. And I also know that Georgia has introduced an amnesty law concerning all people who participated on both sides, on law enforcement and protesters during those events. So I can say that we are following the developments, but I do not recall that we had a specific resolution on only this specific topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
To Georgian legislation, and Marina mentioned the amnesty. In fact, this legislation is actually under discussions. I mean, the discussions have not been finalized, but if we speak about media freedom in general, I mean, I think in that regard, Georgia has done a very good job. I mean, and again, I can refer to many different rankings, including Reporters Without Borders or any other international organization which had been working on an issue where Georgia had been really moving forward and high in the ranking system in that regard. And I mean, throughout for the last couple of years, I can say that the relevant legislation on the media and media freedom had been adopted, which allows to register any media outlet within 14 days without any difficulties. And for today, we are having some 14 nationwide media outlets and more than 100 regional media outlets. And when it comes to internet freedom, we are ranked as a free country. So I am not sure what was the specific reference. Yes, there have been some cases related also with the journalists, as Marina mentioned, that could be the case of the last year of the demonstrations, and the investigations had been there on that. But yeah, I commented on the general terms. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have some 3 minutes before the closing statements. I would like to ask a question, to use the privilege of the position of moderator to Mr. Makharovlishvili. Sorry, I'm learning. And the question is about Russia. The tensions between the European Union and Russia only got worse recently. I would like to know how do you feel the situation in your perspective from your part of Europe?
Thank you for this question, and don't worry about my last name because my last name is so long and so difficult that it is difficult to pronounce even in Georgian. But when it comes to Russia and Russia's interference in the region, of course, it is very worrisome because I have to admit that say that the situation in the region had been in fact deteriorating. I mean, we are happy that we are not in active warfare with Russian Federation, but at the same time, I have to say that the situation had not been improving. In fact, it had been deteriorating because Russia continues the illegal borderization, so-called borderization, and installing the razor wires alongside the occupation line. We are facing constant kidnappings and arresting of people living in the vicinity of the occupation line, and the human rights and humanitarian situation in the occupied regions of Georgia is devastating. Of course, with the war and situation ongoing in Ukraine, as well as the war that took place in South Caucasus between Azerbaijan and Armenia. With that, I must say that Russia, in fact, increased its influence and increased its presence because it brought more military officers, more military presence in South Caucasus regions, which is, of course, very worrying for Georgia, and it should be worrying for Europe and for the West in general, because we truly believe that if we do not have stability and security in the Black Sea, wider Black Sea region, and the Black Sea region in general, we cannot create, the illusion that there is going to be a stability and security in the European continent in general. Therefore, the engagement and involvement of EU in the peaceful conflict resolution processes is extremely important. And of course, we value a lot the presence of EU monitoring mission in Georgia because it is the only international presence on the ground which is deterring all the provocations that come from the other side of the occupation line. But of course, we hope that EU could play even greater role in the peaceful resolution process, but also in the engagement process with the communities who live in the occupied regions of Georgia. I mean, I can speak of many different aspects because this is a topic that needs to be always discussed thoroughly, and there is always a lot of elements to be highlighted. But because we do not have too much time, I would just say that it is important that the West, Europe, keeps Georgia and the region in general high on its agenda with the Russian Federation, on the agenda of its internal discussions, of the agenda of international organizations. Otherwise, we will, of course, end up in a much worrisome situation. And with joint efforts and with joint new endeavors, I believe we can move maybe slowly but steadily towards peaceful resolution of the conflict with the Russian Federation of Georgia, but also with other conflicts in the region.
As you say, Mr. Makharovlishvili, we don't have too much time, but I would suggest that we organize a more geopolitical conference and discuss such issues as well. Now we reach to the time for the closing statements, and I would suggest that we do them in reverse order. And please, you have more or less 2 minutes each. Try to keep them short, and please be inspired by Lawrence Meredith, who spoke about the silver lining after COVID. Probably there is a silver lining overarching. You have the floor, Michael Emerson.
Thank you. Well, my final comments are this. One, I think it's really great that the page has been turned on the recently painful episode of Georgian politics. Question is how to follow through now and get new positive things happening. And for that, I will refer to the association trio proposal, which was referred to earlier, of the three governments, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And the question is whether the European Union will welcome this and help give it effect. Of course, the trio themselves have to show that they are able and willing to put substance behind the framework. But assuming they do, I also note the very important detail in the recent joint article by President Zurbanishvili and Charles Michel, and I quote, "We propose to hold in coming months a leaders' meeting with presidents of Ukraine and of the Republic of Moldova." So at the top level, there's something happening. This should naturally be supported at ministerial and senior official level to give it all proper structure and effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Emerson. Marina, you have the floor.
Thank you. First of all, I'd really like to thank for this discussion. I'm never tired of talking about Georgia, and I'm never tired of cooperating with my dear Georgian partners. My concluding remarks. Georgia is an important partner to the EU. It's important. We are proud that the support to EU and Euro-Atlantic integration is so high in Georgia. And I'd like to reiterate the support of the European Parliament to Georgian democratic reforms and closer integration with EU. You have it, and it will be there, even if sometimes we have the feeling that we are too tired of Eastern Partnership. Second, please manage expectations so that I wouldn't pay so much attention to the fact of membership, where at the same time closer cooperation in different sectors can benefit much more to both sides than just mere membership or mentioning of it. And my final remark, as the chair and co-chair of the PAC, I hope finally to have a face-to-face meeting in November after very successful local elections. We can meet in Tbilisi with dear friends, and we can discuss the future of Georgia after, as I said, very successful local election. Thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence Meredith.
Thank you very much for this extremely important discussion on the anniversary of Georgia's independence. And I'd like to make 3 points. Firstly, the Georgian people have been very clear that they want to get closer to the European Union, and therefore it's the responsibility of the government and the opposition to work constructively together to implement the 19th of April agreement and to move forward all these key aspects of reform concerning electoral reform, but also judicial reform and public administration reform. Secondly, Georgia already has one of the most ambitious agreements the European Union has ever had with any third country. It's really important to use this agreement on both sides to the full potential. This is essential in the interests of bringing benefits to people. And thirdly and finally, we on the side of the European Union stand firmly by the people of Georgia on this path to support them with all these key reforms and ensure that the benefits really reach the people and ensure that there is the opportunity to build back better after this dreadful COVID pandemic, that there is enhanced people-to-people contacts, greater connectivity, both physical and digital, and that they can take part in the green transformation. Thank you very much. Georgia and the European Union are clearly stronger together.
Thank you, Lawrence Meredith. Luc-Pierre Devigne.
Thank you. also I would give 3 points. First of all, today in the informal Foreign Affairs Council, there's a discussion on the unresolved conflict, and Georgia will figure obviously prominently in this discussion, and this is the evidence that Georgia remains on our mind for sure. That's first point. Secondly, the association agreement that we have concluded with Georgia, we should never forget, is the most advanced type of any agreement that the EU has with any third country. But it has delivered a lot, and it can still deliver more. Thirdly, we will continue to support Georgia, as Lawrence was mentioning, deeply, and that includes in its European way and European path for more political association and economic integration. But for that, we need a fully functioning Georgian democracy. And I would argue that Georgia needs first and foremost, because it needs to be solid, needs to be resilient. It does not need to be divided, and we all know to whom that would benefit. And for that, the proper implementation of both the letter and the spirit of the 19 April agreement, brokered by no less than President Michel and its envoy, needs to be done. Thank you.
And last words to Vakhtang Makharoblishvili.
Thank you. Well, I'll be very short and brief. I would say that European and Euro-Atlantic integration doesn't have an alternative for Georgia, because this is a choice that had been made by Georgian people, and it had not been a choice of a given government or a given party. We always like to say that it has been a historical civilization, and as I mentioned earlier, value-based choice. Therefore, what government of Georgia needs to do is basically keep up with the reforms that we have been doing for the last number of years. And of course, we will do our best to implement the association agreement, which had been mentioned to be the backbone, the cornerstone of Georgia's European integration process. But at the same time, of course, we are going to try to open up new doors and new opportunities in this process. I mean, we are not filing the application today. We have pledged to file it by 2024. Therefore, we have a number of years, not many, but a number of years to continue and enhance our efforts to make sure that we are prepared to make that ambitious statement. And in that regard, we believe that we are an European country, and if Georgia fulfills the relevant criteria, which have been there for many years, Georgia should be allowed to join the family which it has been aspiring for years and centuries, I would say. And as Luke mentioned, I can only confirm that to make sure that these efforts are successful, we need a consolidated whole society approach. And I certainly hope and I'm confident that in this process, Georgian community society will be united to make sure that our country achieves its long-lasting goal, which should translate itself in Georgia's EU membership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. First Deputy Minister, and I wish you every luck. And I thank all the participants. This debate was virtual, but I think it was lively. And the only thing that I wish for ourselves is more people-to-people contacts and more face-to-face meetings. Perhaps next one even with a glass of Georgian wine in our hands. Welcome to the new EURACTIV debates. Thank you. Goodbye.